often tell these stories about my life because I believe that everything in life is is a teacher, is a lesson. Everybody that you come across in life is a teacher. Every situation that you experience in life is a lesson. And if you really look at things from that perspective, if you look at life from the perspective of all the good and the bad is meant to teach you something, um, I believe that you'll move with more peace, with more certainty. And I think the most important thing is that you won't repeat some of the mistakes that you made, because once you have gotten a lesson from something, you're less likely to repeat that thing again. And I think this is one of the reasons why people tend to find themselves in a situation over and over again, is because they never get the lesson from the situation. And you got to go back to class. You're going to have to do it over and over again if you fail the class. And the class is life. One of my earliest experiences that taught me the value of being still was the first time that I went to jail. I'm a strong believer in sitting still when the storm is happening. You should always be the calmest person in the room when things are going sideways, because you're going to be the most alert person in the room. If you often see situations where something is going down, there's a fight that's broken out, maybe something's going down in the club, situation where it's crowded, people who lack the ability to be still are often the ones who find themselves in the worst predicaments. So I believe that you should be still to allow yourself to make the best decisions, but also stillness and calmness. Project stillness and calmness out to everybody else around you, and it allows them to know that you have things under control. First time I went to jail, I'd actually caught a case. I was living in Cleveland, Ohio, and I caught a case with a gun and some drugs. Interestingly enough, man, I was probably one of the first persons to self-snitch on himself, because I actually left the keys in the trunk of my car with the gun and the drugs in there. And I was so drunk when the police pulled up, I had walked away from the car. They just walked up to see whose keys it was. They popped the trunk, the gun, drugs were sitting right there. They closed it back and they waited to see if I was gonna come back to the car. But somebody had told me, hey, the police was just in that trunk of that car, man. You don't wanna go back over there. So I ended up leaving the car. And sure enough, the police was sitting on the hill waiting to see who went to that car. They swooped in, swarmed in, tried to make some arrests and figure out who the car belonged to. I think I might have been maybe 20 years old at the time, 19, 20. I wasn't even 21 at the time, so I was still young and dumb, obviously. And I wasn't gonna face up to the music of what I had done. So I decided, hey, I'm gonna take off. I know they know the car's in my name. Eventually they're gonna get me, I'm gonna take off. I ended up moving around a bit. I came back to Cleveland for a while, but then I ended up going back to Chicago. So I went back to Chicago because my grandfather was dying at the time. My mom wanted me to come home and help out with his transitioning and getting things in order with my grandmother so that she could move out of town with them. I'm out riding with my cousins one night. We end up getting pulled over, 5 black youngsters in a car riding through Joliet, Illinois. We get pulled over. The minute they ran my information, they said, hey, you have a warrant in Cleveland and it's extraditable. And they took me to the county jail. This was the first time I'd ever been to jail, or at least big boy jail in my life. I had been in juvenile once. I was actually in a mental facility for a short period of time in my teenage years, but I had never been to actual county jail before, and I didn't know what to expect. They ended up putting me in a 23-hour lockdown, so I was 23 hours locked down, 1 hour out, until I got extradited back to Cleveland, Ohio. The interesting thing was, when I got extradited, I was on a bus with about maybe 20 or 30 other convicts who were being shipped all over the country. So this bus actually made stops at different jails, county jails throughout the state of Illinois, Michigan, and Ohio to pick up different convicts who needed to be shipped to different areas. When I was getting on the bus, they had a crew of officials who met us outside the bus with shotguns, and they were basically giving us this long, drawn-out speech about how we need to be on our best behavior when we got on the bus, otherwise we'd face severe consequences. And I remember just being very still and quiet in that moment. I think I was indifferent, but I also just felt like I didn't have any more fight left in me. You know, up until that point, I had fought and fought and fought. I had made a lot of noise. I was out of control, but at that moment, I just wanted to be still and calm. I remember there was a female sheriff who actually walked up to me and asked me what was wrong, because I was probably the only one out of the group that wasn't talking, asking questions, or being demanding. And I said, nothing's wrong. And I just went back to standing with my face towards the bus. For that entire bus ride, I sat there quietly just contemplating. I was shackled to a young guy from Mississippi who was sitting right next to me. And he talked the entire trip. I mean, he wouldn't shut up to save his life. He just had story after story. He was talking about what he was going to do once he got to court, you know, all of this different stuff. And I remember that female sheriff officer keeping her focus on me. I think she was very curious about what my real disposition was. For some reason, I stood out from the rest of the group on the bus. And when they finally got me to Cleveland and they got me off the bus and turned me over to Cuyahoga County, I remember she said, you know what, I want to wish you good luck on your journey. I think you're going to be okay. And that was the first time that I realized that being calm, being very settled in your approach to things could actually work in your favor and change the way that people looked at you. Things actually worked out in my favor with that case because my stepfather came into play on that particular case. I was actually looking at 3 years in prison for the gun alone. But my stepfather actually stepped in and he had some pull because of his ties to secret societies. Rest in peace, he's since passed on. But he actually had some pull, and he wrote a letter to the prosecutor, and I didn't do a day over the time that I spent in county jail. Actually, the case got thrown out. You know, I'm saying this in full disclosure, knowing that, you know, there's certain people out there watching, but hey, this is my story. My life has been reformed, obviously, since then. I've gone on to do great things, but that was part of the journey.